disappointment in the game.
Let me just stop you right there, actually. Disappointment in the game of life implies that I had any expectations at all of this not being an absolute piece of garbage. But I knew. I had never seen this movie before, but I knew there was an insanely high likelihood that it was a shoo-in for last place on this list. Because even though I had never seen it before, I have heard nothing but bad things about it my entire life. And I checked a bunch of articles ranking every George Miller film. From Screen Rants, the AV Club, Awards Radar, even aggregate sites like Metacritic, IMDb, and my mortal enemy, Rotten Tomatoes. And every single one of those lists had this film in the bottom slot. I think this is the most unanimously agreed upon bottom slot there's ever been in one of my videos before. But I still said to myself, well, despite the likelihood of me despising this film based on how I feel about its predecessor being extremely fucking high, maybe, just maybe, there's going to be a shred of enjoyability that spares it from last place. But as it turns out, I should have just trusted the consensus because this is exactly as bad as everyone has been saying for over a decade. Say hello to one of my least favorite animated films of all time. The one and only Happy Feet 2.
I knew it.
Alright, so it's hard for you to get the full scope of my feelings on this film without briefly touching on how I feel about the first one. So without spoiling too much, since obviously it'll be covered later in this video, I do not like Happy Feet. Like, at all. I've told this to friends and they've been stunned by this development. They tell me, hey, I liked Happy Feet as a kid. Well, that's the key here, isn't it? Yeah, you liked it as a kid. I did too! I love penguins, they're my favorite animal. I thought the funny dancing penguin movie was really good and stuff. Then in 2019, I watched it for my best animated feature ranking video, and it did not hold up to any of my adult sensibilities. So please do not comment on how disappointed you are with my position on Happy Feet unless you have actually rewatched it as an adult and can confirm it still holds up for you. If it does, then awesome, I'm glad you like it. But don't let your fond, nostalgic memories and nothing else cloud your judgment here. Remember, I'm not tearing into your childhood here, I'm tearing into my childhood. Because I really liked this movie as a kid. So how do you think I feel about the fact that I hate it now? But again, now's not the time to go into why. Now we need to talk about the sequel, which I never saw until it came time to make this video. Is it as bad as everyone says it is? Yes, obviously. Mumble has a son now, and his son doesn't like dancing. Oh, the irony! But he gets inspired by this flying penguin influencer, I guess. And he's so excited about wanting to fly and shit. He ran away from home with his little penguin buddies, one of whom is British. And it felt like I was watching Peppa Pig as a penguin for half the movie. It was unbearable. But Mumble starts bringing them home, and then they help this asshole elephant seal, and then they're still trying to get home. And I kept thinking, oh my god, please tell me this isn't what the whole movie is gonna be about. That sounded really boring. But thankfully, they finally got home, and I immediately started to wish that the movie was about them journeying home, because the actual plot was 10 times more boring. A big iceberg showed up, and it's blocking their home, so now all the penguins are trapped, and Mumble has to catch them some fish and find a way to break the iceberg. That's it. The entire last hour of this 90-minute movie is us being stuck in this one location as they try all sorts of ways to break this iceberg and nothing works. That's the fucking plot, are you kidding me? For all of its many faults that we'll get to, the first Happy Feet at least had some scope to its story. It felt almost biblical at times as Mumble journeyed to parts unknown and appealed to the human race in order to stop overfishing and find his place in the world. It was stupid and heavily flawed, but at least it was something, you know? Something unique and grand in scale that I haven't seen before. This shit is the most tired, boring, unbearably drawn out, trite garbage imaginable. Oh, maybe we can flag down the humans and get them to help. But then a snowstorm comes and they give up. Okay, that was a waste of time. Maybe the magical flying penguin can teach them how to fly. Oh wait, it turns out penguins really can't fly and Mumble's son had a stupid, unachievable dream the entire time. Because this guy is actually a puffin, not a penguin. Wow, great. That was a waste of time. Finally, the movie remembers that the franchise used to be about dancing because there isn't a lot of that in this movie. But then, Mumble remembers that he has happy feet and they start dancing to break the ice. This nearly results in his son getting killed. Is the movie over yet? Finally, he remembers he saved that one elephant seal's life earlier, so he asks him to bring all his buddies to weigh down the ice. And the baby penguin sings an annoying opera song, and his voice is really annoying, and I hate this movie, I wanna die! Happy Feet as a franchise basically only has two modes: boring as shit and extremely annoying. There is a secret third option, and that is the most unexpectedly epic thing you've ever seen. But that shit is buried underneath the mountains of mediocrity, and it barely ever happens. But returning to this movie, when it isn't horribly dull, it's just irritating. The Hispanic Robin Williams penguin, more on that later, is back, and more childish and unbearable than ever. He acts really creepy and stalkerish towards a girl penguin, and eventually she's like, "Wow, you were so persistent, but it paid off, and now I realized I should have loved you this whole time." Like I said, the baby penguins are annoying, especially the Peppa Pig one. This is an extremely minor complaint, but I don't understand how Noah the Elder is still around. Like, Mumble's parents both seem to be dead, but for some reason the racist, religious, fundamentalist penguin is still here and completely useless because he's completely on the side of the other penguins and he serves no purpose to the plot. Whatever, I don't really care that much. This movie came really close to being trapped in 1 out of 10 hell. Like, I cannot express enough how much I loathe it. But with that said, two things were actually not bad in it. First, I think this is pretty obvious to anyone who's seen the film, but there's a subplot where Brad Pitt and Matt Damon play gay krill who are on their own little existential crisis misadventure, and that was the best part of the movie for the vast majority of it. It's completely disconnected from the main plot and characters, essentially being this movie's version of the Scrat scenes in the Ice Age movies. But damn, it was the only time I perked up in the first 85 minutes or so. It's not even really that great or funny, but it was kinda cute, and I actually cared about the two of them. Congratulations, Will and Bill the Krill, played by Brad Pitt and Matt Damon. You two have the honor of being the only characters in the Happy Feet universe that I actually like. I'm not joking when I say that. Also, I can't be the only one who thinks they should have gotten Ben Affleck instead of Brad Pitt, right? Like, it seemed too obvious to pair Affleck and Damon together. Was he just busy? And now for the other thing I like. An inexplicable 10 out of 10 moments in a 2 out of 10 film. So, the Happy Feet movies are jukebox musicals, and most of the time when they sing pop songs, it's incredibly annoying, and I hate it. Sometimes it leads to some unintentionally hilarious moments when they pick a meme song, like when one of the Krill starts singing Never Gonna Give You Up, or the Puffin singing Numa Numa. That actually happens in the movie. I laughed out loud. But even though a lot of the non-meme song covers are good and well performed in a vacuum, none of them ever got me sucked into the actual plot of the film. Until this movie's climax, where they try to apply pressure to the iceberg in order to break it, and they sing Under Pressure. Haha, very funny. After I rolled my eyes at that though, something crazy happened. I actually started to really enjoy the scene. I love Queen, but it's not like the admittedly great cover of Somebody to Love in the first Happy Feet got me invested in that scene, but something about this one. Just these communities of elephant seals, penguins, and krill beneath the surface, all coming together through song and dance to apply pressure to this iceberg, was just really powerful and awesome. The cinematography in these movies is admittedly really good, and the camera pans during the sequence make it come alive. That's not even mentioning the gorgeous lights of the krill, and the stellar vocals from both the baritone choir of elephant seals and Mumble's wife and son reaching out to each other through song. It's a genuinely phenomenal cover, and it adds to one of the best climaxes you could possibly ask for in a film like this. With that said, aside from that song and the gay krill, I hate every single aspect of this movie with a passion. I actually couldn't believe it was this bad, and I implore you to stay away from it at all costs. Even if you like the first movie as an adult, statistically speaking, you probably won't like this one. It's dull, it's stupid, it's comparatively scaled down, it's unbearable. Only now, after watching it, do I finally understand the meaning of George Miller's famous 100% real quotes. If you put a gun to my head and said you have to come up with a story for Happy Feet 3, I'd say shoot me. Like, I'm not memeing, that is an actual quote from him. This is not a joke. Look it up. After watching the second film, I completely understand what he meant, because there was no spark behind this dry, absolutely pitiful story. It feels like an obligation film through and through, which isn't really an applicable statement for most of George Miller's other incredibly inspired feeling works. The only Miller movie that even comes close to the supreme awfulness of Happy Feet 2
Happy Feet, Wombo Combo,
is Happy Feet 1. I hate this movie more than words could possibly express. And remember, that fact hurts me more than it hurts you. I think I have a pass to criticize it since it was a big part of my childhood. Like, I earned this right, sorry. I hadn't seen it since I watched it 5 years ago for the best animated feature ranking, but I honestly thought I was gonna like it more now that I'm used to and more appreciative of George Miller's wacky idiosyncrasies as a filmmaker. I thought, okay, maybe I'll admire some of the choices this film made a bit more. And after watching it again, I'm impressed! It's even worse than last time! What really differentiates this movie from similarly wacky George Miller films we'll get to, like Babe, Pig in the City, or The Witches of Eastwick, is the fact that the wacky elements of those movies are charming. When Happy Feet does it, it's the most annoying shit in the world. It's an endless barrage of pop songs sung by horribly ugly characters who are all aggressively sexual for some reason. Like, this has gotta be the horniest kids movie I've ever seen in my life. Unless you want to count Wizards, but like, as much as I love Wizards, I think if you show your kid that movie, you should be put on a list. Anyway, Happy Feet Wombo Combo. It occurred to me halfway through this movie that I didn't like a single character in it. Mumbo is an extremely boring protagonist. His Hispanic stereotype friends are annoying. His dad is a jackass. His mom and girlfriend are both extremely underwritten. Even the Robin Williams penguin is completely charmless. How do you manage to make a movie with a charmless Robin Williams performance?
Well, you got me. By all accounts, it doesn't make sense.
Nothing he said or did ever made me smile. Oh wait, I forgot. Robin Williams plays two characters in this. Not only this weird love guru, but also one of the Hispanic penguins for some reason. I don't know. This movie is okay when it's just about Mumble struggling to fit in because of his passion for dancing and inability to sing. But then they try and equate interest in dancing to religious blasphemy, even though they did a piss poor job of establishing that this is a highly religious society in the first half of the movie. I guess there was the scene where Memphis drops the egg, but that could also be seen as just a special birthing ritual or something. Nothing after Mumble is born resembles rigid religious structures in the slightest. It's pretty much just sprung on you in a scene towards the middle, and it's like, wait, this is what the movie was about? Well, now it is apparently. On top of also being about climate change and the disastrous effects of overfishing. They try and weave that into the misfit penguin and religious zealot plot lines, and it's like, can you just pick a damn lane? The movie would be so much better if it was just about one thing and they developed it, instead of haphazardly shoving 3 things in there. Like, a movie about religious penguins getting their worldview shattered is an interesting concept, but it doesn't really mesh well with 50 pop songs getting sung back to back in the first half. The biggest travesty here is, despite how conceptually insane this movie is, a large chunk of it towards the middle is just so boring. Occasionally, you'll wonder why the penguins are so horny, or why the movie makes a sudden shift in terms of subject matter, but so much of it is just aimless dicking around until it's time for the next abrupt plot development. Then of course we have the ending, where Mumble is taken to an aquarium and everyone falls in love with his Happy Feet. This somehow leads to the governments of the entire world deciding to stop overfishing. And I know this is a dumb penguin movie for babies, but if they really wanted to go there and show live action politicians holding debates about this, I think it's worth mentioning that this would absolutely never happen. Governments would never shut down a lucrative capitalistic fishing enterprise for the sake of helping a bunch of penguins. They wouldn't even do that sort of thing to help people. Frankly, this is an insulting and dumb ending, and I hate this movie's guts. Not to mention, you don't even really feel the effects of the overfishing. The penguins just keep telling you there's no fish, but they never show any sign of them suffering or starving. At one point, one of the Hispanic penguins says, yeah, we don't have a lot of fish, but that's not gonna stop our party. So like, how am I supposed to take the lack of fish seriously as a plot point if nobody ever seems to be suffering from it. This movie sucks. It took some bold swings and is certainly unlike any kids movie I've ever seen before. And it has some positives, like some stellar looking environments and great song covers, particularly that Somebody to Love one. But I'm sorry, I will never understand how anyone can look at this and think, yeah, it's a good movie that deserved to win Best Animated Feature. To this day, this is the only Oscar George Miller himself has ever earned. Mad Max Fury Road won a lot of technical Oscars, but none of those went to him. He was nominated for Best Director for that, but he didn't win. Don't worry though, he's still Academy Award winner George Miller because of Happy Feet. Of all the goddamn movies it could have been for. I've really come to love and respect this guy as a filmmaker over the course of making this ranking, but no amount of awe and amazement at his other cinematic accomplishments can make me spare even a crumb of praise for the Happy Feet movies. I hate them. And like, I guess we could do that thing if you really want to make a video talking about why you love Happy Feet. I'll promote it on my community page if it's good enough. But this is just atrocious in my eyes. To the point where, in every way except the music, I'd argue Romeo and Juliet Sealed with a Kiss is a better film. Unironically, I mean it. I think that's all that needs to be said. Whew. Anyway, this is probably where a certain percentage of you are gonna click off the video since I've talked about all the movies you know about, but I highly encourage you to stick around to hear about the other highly accessible, sick as hell movies George Miller has made. Expand your cinematic horizons, why don't you? This will be very fun, trust me. So with that said, let's move on to the only other George Miller film I'm not too fond of.